All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion. Well, let's start the show. Let's start it off, man.
Here we go.
Got warmed up. Still feeling a little cobwebby for no good reason. Oh, man, and just these things.
It's warmed up because it's 76 degrees in February.
I'll take it. It was an easy winter. I feel like it was an easy winter. Couple cold days, couple snowy days, couple rainy days, and we're out of it.
I think we got one more rainy, snowy tonight, possibly. But
I'm good with that because we're on shift tomorrow, so I can handle that. It's a great day to have rain and snow, and then it's back up to 68 for bike rides after that. Welcome back to your kitchen. Welcome back to the final recap of True Detective Night Country, a.k.a. a bigger letdown than I am to my parents. What a bummer. And like we were just saying, it's kind of far in the rearview mirror, and I've watched so many videos. I've actually stopped watching videos on it because everybody's frustrated at the same things.
yeah,
Incomplete plot lines, dropped storylines.
I got to tell you, when you told me after episode 4 there were only 2 left, I was pretty torqued up about that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They're only doing 6 episodes.
A lot of people were.
Pretty happy that it's was only 6.5 hours time spent
And
time invested.
I got to tell you, if the way it ended with the storyline that it ended on, that could have been the storyline the whole time.
Yeah,
that was easily you could
we
easily
talked
build
about
that
this
out.
too, like halfway through, where I'm like, they're gonna bring something back that you were supposed to notice 5 minutes in, and then they're gonna bring it back and be like, "Ha, gotcha."
Is that just lazy? Is that lazy writing, or is that like thinking you're super smart and like?
I think it's overconfidence of writing. Of, being like, wow, they're never gonna see this coming.
Yeah, because you didn't foreshadow it at all.
Right.
You put one person. I think total, the main character in that climax had like 45 seconds of screen time.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe. And one line.
Mm-hmm.
And she shook her head, and that was it.
Yeah.
Super frustrating. Even more frustrating. Two more frustrating things. First one is all the stuff they threw in from the first season of True Detective, completely meaningless and useless.
Yeah. I will say the only thing, and it's been a while since I watched the first one, but I believe in the first one it was kind of a similar thing of like they flashed the villain like halfway through. Yeah. And then at the end they brought him back, but it was just done so much better.
But the villain was connected the whole time through the story they were chasing.
Yeah.
These people were completely unrelated to everything else they were putting out there. Second most frustrating thing, I think, to a lot of people is that they renewed it for a fifth season now with the same writer as this season. So people are like, well, that's the end of True Detective. Like, I'm not tuning back in for more just fun runarounds. Right. Because I like to get into the show and like dissect it and watch all the YouTube videos on it and see if you could figure out what crazy plot line that wasn't going to happen might be real. But now people are going to be like, it's not even worth having fun with that anymore because all we're going to do is be frustrated that you're going to be like, oh, and by the way, this was the culprit. Yeah.
Yep.
So what a bummer. I'm willing to watch the first 3 episodes over again because they were entertaining, but
you should move on to, what did I call it? Six Nations? Is that what I said? Is that the rugby show I told you to watch?
The Netflix doc?
Yeah.
Is it like a series?
It's a docuseries. I think it's 8 episodes.
Okay.
That one's worth it for sure.
I'll dig into that one. I always get a little bit intimidated watching those things though.
Oh, you will feel lesser about yourself after watching it.
That's what I'm saying. Like they leave me unsettled.
Yeah. Don't watch it with Katie because she'll be like,
grouse.
Yeah.
I get halfway and I'm like, this is making me feel very uneasy. Like I am just not good and stuff. And like,
especially they flash through some weight room scenes and they're like, it's 200 or something. And I'm like, then you realize that they're talking kilos and stuff. And you're like, oof.
Super duper. That's an intimidating lifestyle. Rugby, is it sevens rugby or is it like?
No, it's full 15s.
Are you learning the rules of rugby now?
I have no idea what's going on. I'm learning some stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know that your number reflected the position that you played. So like you don't get to pick your number. If you're fly back or whatever, you're number 9. That's wrong. Don't quote that. But whatever position you are is the number that you're assigned.
That's so is that that's like in football too though. But is
they
it
have
less
groupings
structured?
of numbers, but they relaxed that a little bit.
Okay. Hockey, it's all over the place.
Yeah, hockey's all over the place.
It used to be lower numbers were defensemen.
Yeah.
And then it went up, and now it's just, I don't know if you get to pick your number or what, but there's 98s and 88s.
Yeah.
Obviously, and then 2s. That actually fits. That might have been back when it still mattered, when Duncan Keith was 2 and Seabrook was 7 or something like that. And
baseball is kind of the same way. Once you got into the 40s, you were probably a relief pitcher. And if you were above that, you were someone who didn't have a good chance of making the roster, but now it kind of bounces all over the place.
I forgot. I had something on that front too about rugby and all that stuff. Oh, but that's the mark of a good documentary, right? Right? Is like same with the F1 Drive to Survive one. Mm-hmm. I know zero about that, but I'll watch that documentary, that series all day long. There's a bike race one called about the Lifetime Grand Prix. It's 8 professional bike races, and there's a point structure and all this like pro race stuff going on inside the race. Don't have to know anything about it because they're building like character stories around it, and you're super entertained by
and this is cool because they get into, so it's like 6 nations in in Europe, so you do get a little like the history and culture of each, because I think it's Italy, France, Wales, Scotland, England, and Ireland. So you get a little bit of history in it. You get individual breakouts as they kind of like focus on certain players throughout, so it's entertaining.
All right, well, we'll start it tomorrow. I'm sure you're okay watching it over again.
I sure
am. I put a question box up days ago, and it said, like, give me your unpopular opinions of the fire service, and got some good answers. The 2 that struck people were about, a couple. Mandatory fitness testing, like we should have more of that, which is almost a non-starter of conversation, but it's entertaining. Of course, Joe Galley hit me up immediately about that one. Of course. I'm like, tell that person to send me the blueprint then. I was like, okay. A little chesty. Yep. The other one was about seniority and about how seniority shouldn't count for as much as it does in the fire service. And then I said, well, tell me more about this. And a dozen or so responses came back. People came out of the woodwork that I've never talked to before on social media or through the podcast and wrote paragraphs about their gripes about seniority. I reposted a number of them, but it came down to a couple different camps. And it was the camp of, there was the union side. So Joe Galley hit me up again. And felt immediately on the defense of seniority, of like, why wouldn't you put weight on seniority to afford more vacation time and shift picks and stuff like that? Like that's the most natural thing to do. And if you've been around for that long, you deserve to have more benefits essentially than like the brand new person. You have earned benefit. Then there was a side from the top down that was like, yeah, I am a senior person. Sorry, like figure it out. There's also a number of them that said like, yeah, your job as a junior person is to listen to the senior person and learn some stuff before you think like you have all the afforded leniency and ability of a senior person. Yeah. I think that was coming from highly capable senior people.
Probably. Or highly incapable senior people that use that as the...
Because I said so. Yeah. But then there was a large contingent from the junior membership of various departments who seemed like their biggest issue with seniority was the person who was in a medium to small department who would talk about how good they were, what they did back in the day, low frequency of calls, and they rested on their laurels of that, and they ballooned up in weight and became less engaged, and now they're just sitting back while the junior members are doing their job plus the lazy person's job, and they're just the blanket covered recliner compressor at this point. They're the dusty old guy in the recliner. Yeah. So I want to go through some of that because you're a senior person. You're a senior citizen at this point.
Ish.
Coming up on it. I'm a few years behind you, but I feel the need to defend seniority too, because I feel like we're still relatively engaged.
Sure.
Right. And I think there's a value to seniority in the fire department. I also see the other side as I worked in small departments of like, this guy is just there. Yeah. Nobody's pushing him out. He's not leaving because there's no pressure on him. It's an easy enough job. He can stay here for 10 years past retirement if he wants to, but he's in the way. And I've also seen it where the higher up in the structure doesn't care or is complacent. That sends a message to the station that they don't have to care. and it just trickles all the way down. But then if something happens, the new guy gets blamed for something.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you've been telling me it's not important, or I don't have to care since I've been here.
Right.
Maybe you should have cared and I would have cared a little bit. Mm-hmm. So with all that, where do you want to start?
I think you kind of have to separate a little bit in terms of like the vacation picks, salaries, those benefits. I think that within pretty much any career, you need to establish some sort of incentive for longevity. And if there is no carrot dangling like long term, I think it might give some people pause to actually get into that 30-year career. And if you look outside of the fire service, it's the same thing. We don't get bonuses, so it's like we have to have other incentives for staying around for 30 years, and I think that's a good way to incentivize people to stay in a career with longevity, is knowing that they will continue to accrue more and more benefits as they go. And, we're in an industry where you'll benefit from that eventually, and you'll probably benefit more, we did not have engineer pay, longevity pay. I think those are kind of the two big paramedic stipends that were attached to pay. We didn't have that stuff when I started, and right before me, we had fewer Kelly days, and so it's like, yes, sometimes it sucks to look at your peers and go, wow, I feel this disparity for somebody who's not doing as much as me.
Yeah.
But at some point, that guy was in the same shoes as you, but with slightly worse benefits, with slightly less pay. And so I think in ours, to be able to have that established is something to continue to work for and stay in the industry. I don't have a problem with that. I think it should be incentivized that way.
So that's one side of it, right? Mm-hmm. I would say that what it sounded like here, did I already say this? I can't remember if I said this before or after we started recording. It seemed like the smaller departments with low frequency are more susceptible to this. Did I say
Probably.
That? Because there's not as much upward movement. Like I said, the person's sitting there for a long time, and the lack of frequency lets them say, like, yeah, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, we had a big fire. What are the chances of that happening again?
Right.
How much do we really have to train on this through the floor stuff or RIT stuff?
Mm-hmm.
We don't go mutual aid to anybody. We handle everything in-house. We all know each other. We're all a bunch of good guys.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great place to work, and
yeah,
what's the worst that could happen, And I hate throwing around the complacency word, but I think that's what it kind of falls into, is complacency.
I think you do. You get some inbrededness too of like, if you keep promoting from within and you don't get any outside experience or perspective in, you kind of just stay in that same lane, possibly, especially if the pool of candidates to move up, is small. Sometimes you're given, you have to play what you're given at that point, Yeah. And so you might hope that you're going to get A+ people moving up, but you might not be, you might be getting C+ people as the only person who stepped forward,
So that's one of the craziest things that came back in these responses. 2 people, one from a pretty big department, very big department, another one from a very small department, said their promotions are 100% based on seniority. Mm-hmm. Where if you're a lieutenant and I got hired a day after you and you retire, I'm just now a lieutenant, which I think is just bananas.
It's crazy.
Dude,
yeah.
It's just how does that even, that just boggles my mind. And it makes me just more happy that we work where we do, mm-hmm. because it's a competitive process.
I don't even, it's even just thinking of that, of like the path that you're going to take on your career, whether you're going to go promotion wise or whether you're going to go truck wise or engineer wise. And then the next day it could be like, surprise.
Yeah.
I know you worked really hard to become an engineer and really proficient at it, but you're next up.
Well, and I'm sure there's more to it, but we have people that like do not want to be in that leadership role. Mm-hmm. Like they'll say like, no, I want to do stuff and ride backwards, or I'm fine being on the ambulance. Like, no, I don't want to be part of the organization in that aspect. I'm sure they're not forced to promote, mm-hmm. but also at that point, so let's play both sides into it. You're at 22, 23 years, and now you're able to get a promotion and mm-hmm. get more on your pension. Are you going to say no to it because you just don't want to be there? Or you're like, maybe this makes me retire at 26 years. If I just do this for a couple of years, even though I hate it, I'm probably not that great at it.
I'm sure you get some people that hang around counting numbers and going, 3 more people go, and then I get a pay bump for 1 paycheck, and then I go, but what are you getting out of that person for that, those 3 years potentially?
Not a lot.
Probably
I can only assume not a lot. And I think these are kind of tough conversations for me to navigate, because I don't like airing the fire department's dirty laundry necessarily.
Sure.
Because I don't want to make us like vulnerable to too much criticism. But some departments, I think, are deserving of some criticism, and that's just some crazy ways to do stuff.
Yeah.
What I don't,
they talk on the radio during lunchtime, that kind of thing.
they're deserving of much more than criticism. Have you, when you were coming up and you had senior guys in front of you, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a different universe altogether from when you started, even to when I started and now.
Yeah.
Our hierarchy, our structure, the expectations, what we're doing in terms of just even paramedicine and just our responses and stuff like that is a different universe, a different department altogether. Was the junior membership vocal against lazy senior membership when you came on, or was it more because of where we worked, we're busy, and this guy might be a slug now, but he proved himself back in the day and he holds value somewhere else, so it's no big deal?
I don't think, so the junior guys, I don't think were as vocal about lazy or inept senior pipemen, but we had really good officers, a lot of really good officers when I started, and a lot of really good engineers when I started, and those guys did the complaining for you. They took care of business for you, so we didn't have to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
We had some really strong leaders at both positions, and that stuff you found out real quick who was a low performer.
Yeah.
And you really didn't have to identify it vocally from the junior side of things. It was pretty much told to you. Yeah. Most likely.
So how did was there dissension then, or just like, let's just humor this guy when he gives us orders and I'll take care of you?
I think it was just you trusted your skills, and as long as he wasn't going to take you down a bad path, you just kind of went with it. If someone called nostrils, nose holes over the radio, you just kind of laughed at it and moved on. So there's I think most of the time you just chuckled at it and told the story when you got back.
Because overall I think that's a benefit of, like I said, where we work is you will get found out pretty quick where we work if you're a low performer. And then in today's age of where we work, you'll get dealt with one way or the other. You'll get a training plan, you'll be identified, you'll be put on the microscope, you'll get transferred somewhere for department needs. And not transferred somewhere to protect you more, but somewhere to keep an eye on you more. But in these other departments where it's more like less regulated or smaller, low frequency, you're going on hoping and prayer that like when this stuff goes down that you're still good, or you know what's going on.
Things with us were a little different too then, in that you could hide a low performer better. We were not a field treatment paramedicine department. We were a load and go, and in order to continue to collect your paramedic stipend at the time, you had to be assigned to an ambulance, so suppression vehicles couldn't collect. So a lot of weak, older, lazy, low performers were ambulance lieutenants.
Okay.
And there wasn't a lot of treatment in the field, so it was just like load and go.
It's always the right answer.
Yeah.
Treat them with diesel.
And we had jump companies a lot then, so we had 3-person ambulances. A couple times, on at least 2 3-person ambulances every day, and so you could hide an officer there too. And we had a lot of guys who suffered for their career being assigned to a lieutenant, basically because they were high performing firefighters and paramedics, so they got to take care of. Probably shouldn't have said that.
That person. No, it's. I think it's absolutely true.
They, whether it was intentional or unintentional, they took care of the rig and the calls. But
that was
and picked up the slack, I should say.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. That was then, and I think naturally the process, hopefully, it did in our department. It refines itself, and it's like, well, this isn't acceptable anymore. When I started, there were some super strong, obviously same ones you had, but just a few years later, super strong leaders, to the point where I was like, it took me 10 years to feel comfortable approaching promotion, because I was like, I have to imagine myself giving orders to this guy.
Yeah.
And there's no way I'm doing that, because I don't want to screw up in front of him. And I want to make sure I can like defend what I'm doing. And I just don't feel like I'm capable with this strong leadership above me.
Yeah.
Which I think was good. You know, you basically govern yourself into getting more experience until you're ready. But it also might be my own problem of like, yeah, I probably could have done it a few years earlier.
Yeah.
And I just didn't work with those people. They're just intimidating, and maybe they would have helped me come up to that level. Like the mentor we always talk about, Dan Wagner. Intimidating to work around, because you're like, oh crap, dude. I know I'm doing 98% of it right, but 2% he's going to let me know about, and he's going to be right. But when you work under him, he's like, no, let's get you up to 100%. It's all good, man. Like, that's why we're here, is to make this better, you know? So a majority of this, in my opinion, comes back to like, you just control what you can. Yeah. Speaking now to like the smaller departments who are kind of feeling the sacrifice, they're feeling the impact of a lazy person above them.
Right. And
they're like, well, this guy's junk. I'm going to be impacted by him. Well, I hate that I'm doing his work.
Yeah. Here's the thing too. You're not changing that guy.
Yeah.
You also are not going to have, we're very lucky right now. Our crew, somehow we got high performers across, like at our station right now. We're in a good position. You're not going to have A+ players with your crew all the time. It's going to be a collection of a couple A's, a couple C's, maybe a D, and that's going to change all the time.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand that, and you have to understand that there's probably not something that a 2-year guy is going to change in a 20-year guy. And so I think that you have to kind of take care of your own property at that point, you know, or your own lawn, and not worry about, you know, how bad that is over there. Unless it that's just stuff around the station, you know, if he's not helping out with it or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's something that's actually like detrimental out on calls,
right,
then yeah, you can discuss that with your officer. But I think there's only so far you can go with that as well, you know, unless it's a really severe case.
Well, there's also a little bit of vigilante justice out there.
For sure.
Where we've heard stories of like the crew has a constant problem with this specific officer or lieutenant, and the crew agrees like, that guy's on an island now. Like, we're going to stop going above and beyond for him because he's not providing any sort of value back to us. And so now things that he should be taken care of aren't going to get taken care of, and he's going to have to answer for that. And he'll probably sell us out. Like, he'll probably come down and be like, my crew is supposed to take care of that. But there's going to be some things that we were legitimately not supposed to take care of that he's going to have to take the heat for. When the chief asks him, why isn't this done? He says, my crew is supposed to take care of it. The chief will say, it's not their job to take care of that.
Right.
And so you're rolling the dice at that point, and depending on how long you have left with that person, maybe it's a good tactic and maybe not. But you also have to have a group in that vigilante team that is together and agreed on that, which is tough to do also. I haven't experienced that, thankfully, but we've definitely heard stories of that, of like, no, I'm just going to let this guy do his thing now, and he doesn't help. I think what we do now is like, we work with people that will tell you, I'm not mopping the floor as a senior member. I'm not mopping the floor. I'm not unloading the dishwasher. I might make coffee once in a while. Luckily, those people who are saying those things are really good at other parts of their job where they hold value.
Hopefully.
And most of it, the people I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And most importantly, the value is on calls and stuff like that. So you're willing to let them slide in the station stuff because you know that on calls they're going to be locked down pretty heavy. There was another point in here that you and I talked about real quick beforehand that I think needs a little bit of clarification, possibly defending. There was a comment that came through that said, the fire service is the only service or industry where seniority doesn't mean getting more out of you, or the time as you get more years on, you don't have to give more or produce more, you know. I can go to it directly just so I stop jamming it up here, but it says, the fire service is the only place where seniority doesn't mean more out of you. I felt defensive about that one because different doesn't mean more. Different means different. And as you climb in seniority, you should be doing different things. But it doesn't mean you're doing less things. They're just not maybe your hands aren't as dirty.
Right.
And I'm going through that now, and I think I'm going to go through it more when the transfers come up. Is like going to be spending way more time behind the computer and doing admin stuff and organizing stuff. Less time getting greasy knuckles. Am I doing less, or am I just doing different?
Yeah. I think that there's efficiency of it too. I think outside of, I don't agree that statement is unique to the fire department. And I think I used the law firm example. If you think that the major players at the top of a law firm are doing as much work as the peasants, who are trying to
in the basement,
in the basement filing files away and, working 80 hours a week, like that's the way it is. And if you want to move up, that's the price you pay in the beginning, Is that back to the suck to suck thing?
Sucks to suck.
Yeah. But, no, so like, the other thing is like, I think once you get to certain points, with seniority, like, especially like in the engineer position, like I think that those guys become kind of an extension of their officer at that point. And there's other leadership stuff that they take on, whether it's, granted to them or earned or whatever it is, but they kind of become what I think is like a good engineer ends up being like the backbone of the operation. Cause if, not that any of the other, ranks don't all play the part together, but the engineer, like they kind of get out and, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, the whole thing goes awry, take the wrong turn, you can't get water in. It's a pretty individual thing. And, so I do think that their job, does inherit some responsibility and some leadership that isn't promoted, necessarily. And, with that extra leadership, sometimes mopping the floor and, taking out the trash liners isn't always in it anymore, Yeah.
Well, I agree with that. We work with a guy now who's got a total of over 30 years on in the fire service, and because he transferred 11 years in. And, I will absolutely defend that he doesn't have to mop the floor and do stuff when there's 4 other guys in the station, including me, with roughly 13 less years on in general. Like, no, if he wants to sit at the table and read the paper while we're vacuuming and doing stuff and cleaning up around him, then I'm okay with that. But we're also talking about people doing stuff the right way. We're putting out how we kind of operate and our idealistic approach. This all falls apart if those things aren't happening the right way.
Right.
If you do have the person that's just a slug and in the way, if you do have someone that just shirks responsibility because they're just tired of doing it, or they're burnt out for whatever reason, or disinterested for whatever reason, that's when it starts to fall apart.
My suggestion, though, if you are really interested in getting the slug to go, is like you might have to do some like reverse psychology on them, and in either one, find out what their personal interests are and maybe start engaging them that way, or find out what skill they do have and ask for help on it, and maybe that gets them moving a little bit and gets them engaged. I think that with those people attacking them, it's never going to work. You're just going to get frustrated, and that's not going to motivate them to be like, you know what? That guy's right. I really need to get out there and do stuff. Yeah. So, if you're a junior guy who's recognizing that and they do have some skills, they're just hidden in there, like pry around a little bit and see if you can engage them. If you don't want that, then that's your problem at this point. You just have a problem with someone working less than you and collecting more money than you, and which is frustrating, but that's the way it's built. Yeah. And it's built for, like you're saying, it's built for the people who are doing it right. Unfortunately, there's always going to be people who aren't doing it right. And I've said that to people as an officer. I've had very candid conversations with people of telling them, like, we know there's this issue going on with you. Give me something good to report, and we're just going to exploit that. Yeah. And I give the same speech when I get to the crew of, like, if you screw up and you think it's going to go somewhere, I need to know immediately, because I can help you through it. It's probably not that bad. But even if it's like, I took the wrong turn 5 times getting to that call, I'm going to document it for the sole purpose that we're going to pay attention to that. And now a year from now, you've shown 100% improvement. That's like a freebie. It's a gimme. Give me something small you screw up on, and I'll show improvement on an easy thing as like a low-hanging fruit. But give me something. Like, you got to give me something. If you're just going to be 100% jerk
a well-rounded slug,
Mm-hmm.
I got nothing. And then when they come to me and say, why isn't this guy getting his PS tracks done? I can say like, oh, because he does these 5 other things and we have a probationary member out there. He missed a few days. My bad.
Yeah.
If you're absent altogether and they say, why isn't his PS tracks done? I say, I'm sorry. I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
I guess now we have several meetings to have.
He didn't do them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because exactly why you think
Yep.
he sucks. There's another one that I think is important to delineate. It says, no other job do you get quote unquote respect for molding yourself into the sofa for 20 years. It plays 2 things against each other, seniority versus respect.
Yeah.
Also, who has sofas in their stations?
Gross.
Super gross. My part-time department head one is gross. You don't get respect for molding yourself into the recliner.
No, it's the polar opposite right there.
But you get seniority.
Yeah.
You do get seniority. That's a pain point you were talking about, is like, yeah, sometimes it's easy to just hate on someone because they're doing less than you. Obviously, they're not doing it right. And they are getting 4 more vacation picks than you a year and $10,000 more because they've been there for longer.
Mm-hmm.
That is frustrating.
Yeah.
I think you can choose to continue to hate that person, or hopefully if they're not on your crew, you just accept that as like, good thing they're not really impacting me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not paying them. It's not coming out of my pocket. They're not slowing me down at all. No, I don't have to like that person. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no real solid answer to that one besides that sucks and that person sucks and I'm sorry.
Right.
Try Curt's tactic of appealing to them. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a for real problem. What else do you think on the seniority front? I mean, I get it. Again, it makes me happy that we work where we do.
I mean, it's just a wheel, though. You know, it keeps turning. You're going to be on the top of the seniority at some point in time.
Yeah.
And someone below you is going to be whining the same way you whined 15 years ago. You know, it's just, it'll benefit you, you know. Sometimes it comes sooner, sometimes it comes later. The other thing too is like, I feel like sometimes this happens with the demographic for your department. And so if you're a pretty senior department, you probably hear a little bit less of this, you know, but right now we're probably, would you guess 40% of our people are below 5 years?
Close to it. Yeah.
You know, that's a lot. That's a mob, you
Yeah.
know, and if they chirp enough, you know, then yeah, you start hearing those things and they feed on each other and fan the flames a bit, you know? So, but like I said, you know, eventually you get your turn at the top, you know?
Yeah.
And it's different, you know, it all depends on when people come and when people go. You know, we had guys that I came on with that came on 2-3 years above me have been engineers since they had 10 years on. It was 18 years for me, you know? So it's like, that's
the
way it goes. The cycle. It's the way it goes.
I will say it definitely drove home the point of providing value in one way or another. Like, if you're not going to be the most in shape, then please be the best at something else or be good at something else.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't look at you and just count you off immediately. And we have people like that who aren't the best of shape, but you're like, yeah, but he's really good at X, Y, Z. Or like, I would definitely count him on for that. I think one of the most unfair people to pick on is like the people who aren't line personnel per se. They're like in the car and they're the shift commander or the battalion chief or whatever. And they're like, that guy's out of shape and overweight and he's telling me to get in better shape. Well, yeah, because he's not doing what you're doing. Like,
because he has to listen to 40 babies on the phone every day complain about the schedule.
Yeah. Like, I don't need him to be running in buildings. I need him to be very well organized and very good at putting people where they're supposed to be and know where I am in the building and manage that. That's what I need him to do. I don't need him to do all the physical stuff. That's some of the more unfair ones I've seen.
I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, just providing value and value where it counts, which is operationally. If you're bad operationally, but you're really good at cleaning light bulbs, that doesn't do us a lot of good.
Yeah.
If you refuse to clean and do spring cleaning, but I know you're just locked down on water supply and you go to classes and do hose advancement and you're a good leader or whatever your category is, I'm not concerned about that. We'll figure that out. In the same vein, some of the most frustrated I've been working, and I've told you about this before, was like the fish rotting from the head type of deal, where the station captain or the senior person in the station is checked out. That sends a message to their crew their crew doesn't care. So the crews on both sides of them are like, well, if they don't care, that's the captain's station. If he doesn't care, then I'm not going to care. And then inevitably the low guy gets blamed for it when something goes wrong. I think the final thing I got was like you said in the beginning, the guy that sucks that just uses because I'm senior or like because I told you so is the approach. Mm-hmm. And especially in our department where you said the numbers of how many people are junior, they're noticing and they're not buying it one step. And I actually have a feeling that a lot of our junior guys now are less likely to be influenced like I was out of spite and be like, well, I don't care then. Yeah. And more likely just to group together and just discard that person altogether. And then they lose effectiveness. I feel like that's the new age of the firefighter coming up is like, I'm just going to recognize you suck and I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. And I'm just going to disregard everything you say, which will come back to bite them. But it's way less of like, well, he's the boss. I'll just fall in line and I guess it'll work out. Mm-hmm. I think we're in a different world now where people will be almost openly like disregarding of what you're saying because they know they're smarter than you. Yes. They know they're smarter than you and they've seen you not perform. Mm-hmm. So they're like, nah, and just move on, which is a major shock to some senior guys. Sure is. Major shock. So if you're a senior guy, you've more or less been put on notice that this new generation of firefighter is not going to fall in line just because you've been there long enough. And it may not be insubordinate behavior, but they're not going to be your friend like the old guys were like, yeah, but he's a great guy and he's been around and he'll help us out if we need to. Mm-hmm. I can do it if I had to kind of thing. Yeah. It's not flying anymore. If you're a junior guy, what I would say was good job recognizing it. Don't get yourself in trouble. It's not going to be worth it because you'll be around a lot longer than that guy is going to be here. Yeah. And don't burn any bridges that you might have to cross in the future because that guy's got friends. And those friends might be 10 years junior to him, and they might be your boss someday when that person's gone, and you're still going to feel the effects of telling this guy to suck it or whatever, or disregarding him on a call. You might be like, oh, thank God that guy retired. Those problems will persist. Yes. They will absolutely persist. And if you're on the union side, keep fighting, man. I want more pay and better benefits. Mm-hmm. So I'm not taking it for granted, and I hope that we continue to earn the benefits that we're afforded. 100%. I mean, if nothing else, you can look at it like that. We have guys that work out purely out of obligation because they say, I came from a small department and I wasn't getting paid very well, but you guys are paying me well and we're running calls. I feel the only reason I work out is because I feel the need to justify my salary at this point. Mm-hmm. And I say, I'll take it. Sure. 100%. I'll absolutely take that. So that if nothing else, you can always fall back on that. Mm-hmm. About some closing stuff. What do you think? As a senior citizen yourself.
I think we panged it pretty good.
There's a lot in there.
There was.
There's another side of it that we're not going to get into now, which is like the trauma side of it and why people stack on 50 pounds and withdraw and become that person. That I'd have to think about that one for a while because there's so many different sides to it. I hate the old argument of like everybody's fighting a battle you don't see, so be nice to everybody. Definitely don't be nice to everybody. Yeah. Like you definitely don't have to do that. No. But I think taking your approach of like maybe getting rid of your disdain for a second and appealing to them.
And as I'm thinking about it more, I do think that like right now, like I'm a collection of a lot of guys that I just asked question to that gave me their time, and not that all of them were amazing guys in seniority. Like, I mean, probably like one of my top compliments on the job was like Randy Lenhart was the driver of Engine 1. And I just had a couple questions about him, about stuff that I would ask him at pass on. And like one day he's like, man, I love answering your questions. He's like, you always have good questions. And like, for me, I was like, dang, if this guy's saying that, then, and it kind of sparked a little passion. But we had a guy on the opposite end of the spectrum who was the head of our fleet division. And the guy could tell you everything about an engine, but he was the worst counterpart to work with, the worst coworker to work with around the station. But you could get a ton of stuff, pumping information or information out of him if you wanted it, And so I think you could probably seek out a little bit more, and maybe that might give you a little bit. You don't need to fully respect the person, but at least enough respect to go like, okay, there is some benefit I can get out of this guy. I understand his limitations that he's going to give me other places, but I'll benefit off of this guy somehow.
Yeah.
And just find that,
Yeah, and we brought up a hypothetical person that we both know in the past with stories. I think I actually edited one out our last episode we did together. I've gotten some really good career advice from someone that I would not want to go into a burning building with.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't make it okay that he was still working, but at least I can look back and be like, you know what? There was a person in there, and he did give me decent advice from time to time,
mm-hmm.
and I'm glad he's not working anymore, but I don't look back and be like, that guy was 100% bad.
Yeah.
I wish he never existed. He was a blight on the department history.
Yeah.
No, he started out as one thing, turned into a different thing. Luckily, I was able to have a decent relationship with him where he gave me some good stuff from the beginning part when he was a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was a benefit to me.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is you don't always have to pull out useful line information. Like, I've had some really weak performers, but they're really good with financial stuff, or they're really good on the Fair Promotions Act or pension stuff. And so, like, it doesn't have to be like, okay, well, teach me friction loss. It could be, this guy's really smart on that, on rental properties, so, so there's other ways you can benefit off of people's information other than being like a high performer online too.
But yeah, I guess old guys, just show your value, like show value, preferably operational value. That'd be the best. But show value so the young guys just don't discount you automatically because they're willing to.
Also, I'm getting a little long-winded on this too, but on the flip side of this
is free. Yeah.
If you're a new guy and you ask someone, an old guy, questions, you better be willing to sit there for the next 20 minutes and listen to the answer that I'm going to give you. Yeah. But if you ask me a question and 5 minutes in or 5 seconds and you're like, no, I know, I think I'm good. Like, what are we doing here? Okay. So like,
we'll tell the story.
I think I just did for the most part.
Well, but then we addressed it more or less,
we
right?
Did.
And you shared that frustration with me, and then it happened to me, where he basically asked a question to confirm what he already knew, but was not socially keyed in enough just to be like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
He felt the need to tell me then. That's what I thought after this long-winded explanation I gave him. So we had what I think is a valuable conversation where I essentially said, like, if you know the answer, don't ask me that question just to make me work to answer it for you.
Right.
If you want to show me what you know, tell me and I'll confirm it or we'll adjust it. But don't make me work to answer your questions. Yeah. Like, don't do that. Yep. And I told him, because next time you ask, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm going to ask you, what do you think, smart person?
Right.
And you might be right all the time, but I don't need to put in the work to answer that question if you're just going to tell me, oh, yeah, I knew that, or that's what I thought.
At this point, I put almost 20 years in of learning this answer that I'm going to give you. And so for you, with 2 years on, goes, nah, I got it. Like, you don't, because I just got it.
You might have a little, you might have just that sentence I gave you, but look at all this.
Yep.
look at everything you don't know that you don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That we're not going to talk about now.
Right.
Because you got it.
Correct.
Oh yeah. That's a cool one. I think you're right. I think we did hit it, you crotchety old senior citizen.
We did, yeah. Took a little bit to pry it out, but
it happens. It happens. It's a tricky one, man, because we come from a good department that this does not fly. The lazy senior guy thing doesn't fly.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to get out of what we're doing and stop providing like our examples of it, because there's departments that are not operating that way. And they have some for real problems with stagnant in the way recliner compressors. And it's a bummer. Keep testing.
Yeah.
Wait for them to leave. Keep working. Find your group of motivated individuals around you. You don't have to be Jocko and like get up at 4 a.m. to be hyper vigilant. Yep. But there's absolutely little pockets of guys.
You can empty the dishwasher, but like
you can do that at whatever time you want. Because I'll walk right by it. Remember, it's 9 in the morning.
6:05.
Yeah, I'll walk right by it at 3 in the morning, just as I do at 6:05 in the morning.
Better let these cool down.
Oh, dude, too hot. Just leave the door cracked. Let the steam out. There's probably some soakers from the night before sitting there because we're afraid to work hard on pots and pans. There's no such thing as a soaker. But can I just get that out of the way also? There's no such thing as a soaker. There's only lazy firemen who don't feel like working for 5 minutes on a pan.
Sure.
There's no such thing as a soaker. Stop it. But there's absolutely pockets in our department of like 4, 6, 8, 10 people who go to classes and like do their own thing, regardless of what their officer's doing or their senior leadership is doing, because that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Find those people and just keep doing your thing, and just trust that that person's going to retire, and just try to hold on to what you got long enough so when you're in that position, you don't become one of them and people don't hate you like you hate them.
Correct.
That's a decent summary of it, right?
I think so.
Sick. Once again, did not mention Rescue 1 CBD or Fourth Frontier in the beginning of this thing. Talked about True Detective, Night Country. Do not suggest you go watch True Detective, Night Country at all. Do suggest you go check out Rescue 1 CBD, 0.000 THC, safe for the job. Pretty awesome dude down there in Florida and pretty awesome company. Also, check out the Fourth Frontier X2 heart rate monitoring strap. I've been saying like, oh, it's just like every other monitoring strap, but it has lead to EKG. Of course, I'm misrepresenting the company, because every email I get from them, it says not just a heart rate monitoring strap. Great ambassador for the brand. It's not just another heart rate monitoring strap. It has all these things, more than you think, plus lead to EKG, which is pretty dope, I think. I use it. I just used it yesterday in the bike ride, because I think it's cool to be able to see lead to, because I am still just the tiniest bit interested in being a paramedic. It's fading quickly, but I still have an interest. I answered a question box on Instagram the other day. Someone said, based on my restock list, guess what call I was on? Sucked. I missed it completely. Super embarrassed. And I told them, like, I would have really done really good at this like 12 years ago. I would have nailed this thing. And they're like, you mentioned stuff that's not even on the list. I'm like, I thought it was an incomplete list. Yeah. And the stuff they were giving is not even in our SMOs. Like these drugs they were giving, way big deviation from what we would do. But I was wrong anyways. I was like, man, I suck, dude.
I have to make sure that I'm the second person in with the cot when I used to go to the hospital, because I don't know the key code to get in anymore. So they're like, it's the address. I'm like,
of where?
Of where?
Station 1? There's no way it's Station 1's address. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Let's all keep working on being more capable and durable, both on the job and away from it, and be a 4-shifter.